Oh, hi! Welcome back! And we are doing it! I mean, it took me only 1 month to press record on the second video, but slow progress is still progress. So, in the previous video I said that this memoir, this book, will cover a period from after I left my job in tech. But during these months I also realized it will make sense to give you some context how I ended up in tech, so we can set the stage, so to speak. When it comes to higher education, I'm joking that I didn't choose it, it chose me. And it happened when I was still in the 7th grade. I have an older brother, and at that time he went to study at the tech university, and since I was also good at exact sciences, I decided to follow in his footsteps. I was also good at creative arts, but I didn't think much about that at that time. So when I finished school, I moved from our tiny town into like large city where the university was, and looking back I can say that for sure it was a very pivotal moment in my life. I was only 16 years old, living in a new huge city by myself in a dorm. And also the funniest thing during that time was it just so happened so that I was the only girl in the group of 30 boys. Honestly, it's still a mystery to me how it could happen, because in another 9 groups there were girls, and here I was, one lioness among 30 lions. I don't know why I feel like you already know it about me, but I was very type A student, and so when after 4 years, we had a summer internship in a tech company, I did there well too, and they offered me a full-time position. I decided to accept it immediately, and for quite some time I was juggling being a full-time student and working full-time job. Because apparently I love a good challenge, or I just love to make things harder for myself. It was year 2007, and I loved working in tech. At the beginning we were quite a small company, and almost all of us were pretty young and ambitious, full of ideas and enthusiasm, and so... But also remember that I was scared to start this new venture because it was my first real life work experience, and so naturally I wanted to do well there. And so I put a lot of time and effort in order to achieve that. I started as a quality assurance engineer, but quickly progressed to a team lead position. Oh, and I forgot to mention that it was back in Ukraine, from where I'm originally from. So another cool thing that I loved about working in tech was we had projects from different countries, and so the main language that we used for communication was English, of course, and so it was a great opportunity for me to practice my skills, which will come in handy later. So the work was really great. I loved working with people, I loved the projects that we were doing. I even had an opportunity to go to a couple of business trips to US. So I was feeling that I was crushing this whole work thing. But after 5 years, I started to feel that something was off. I didn't feel as connected to the work I was doing as I was before, and I started to be a little bit late to work, or take more days off that I would normally do, and it was very out of character to me. I gathered all my courage and talked to my manager about it. Together we decided that it might be good for me to try something different within a company, and so I shifted into more project management role. I love that it added variety into my work life, and I was able to work on multiple projects at the same time and with different teams. All in all, it was a great change, but still I couldn't shake a feeling that something was off. Honestly, I became very frustrated about it. I think unintentionally I was looking for a way to release a tension that started to build inside of me, and I found it in baking. It felt amazing. I mean, I'm fascinated by the fact that every time you're starting with the same basic ingredients like flour and sugar, some eggs, water and salt, and you can make completely different beautiful creations and also have a pleasure to enjoy them. I mean, clearly food is my love language, but still. Later, I also realized that in baking I found a feeling that sometimes I was missing in project management. You know, when you work with people, you invest all of your time and energy into people, and you don't necessarily see the results of your work. Until maybe years later you meet one of them and they tell you, you know, actually, I love having you as my manager because you always made me feel supported. But anyway, I digress. So baking was my stress remedy at that time, and since I had a lot of pressure inside of me, I baked a lot. It was not humanly possible to eat everything I made by myself, so I started to bring my creations to work. And do I need to tell you that a lot of people appreciated this gesture? Here's a photo of one of the Happy Fridays we did at work. And Happy Friday was our tradition in the department when we would make homemade meals and bring them to work, and then had a lunch or dinner together and share a great conversation and had fun. It quickly became my favorite activity of the week. So to paint the picture, I'm about 6 years into my job, and I started to feel that something was shifting inside of me. I became less and less interested in a traditional side of tech and more interested in connecting with people and exploring my creative side. So naturally the question I had in front of me was, what do I do with all of that? Well, I tried to be reasonable and took myself out of jumping the ship. Besides, every time I would bring the possibility of leaving tech and pursuing my baking passion, people around me would say that it was pretty insane idea, and honestly part of me thought that as well. It would take me another year of inner battle before the voice inside of me grew so strong and loud that I couldn't ignore it anymore. To me, it was clear as day. I needed to leave the safety of what has been and to leap forward into what has to come. Why and how, I didn't know that, but strangely enough, I don't remember feeling scared about that decision. Probably because by that time I was so tired of living in the constant battlefield between my feelings and my thoughts that I was just happy to do something about it. I was so happy that when I came to a final review with our HR manager, they told me that they have never seen anyone as happy as I was sitting in that chair. Here's a photo of me on my last day at work, and it's special to me, well, for many reasons, but one of them is because on that day I completely unexpectedly received a very meaningful gift to me. The girl I was working with on one of the projects, she painted a painting for me. And she said that it's symbolically on this picture the cat represents me. She, the cat, is holding a bunch of dandelions in her hands, but she's willing to release them all in order to pursue the one that is calling her name. I mean, it's hard for me to find right words to describe what this unlocked inside of me. I have had this painting with me during all the moves that I made in the last 8 years, and maybe it faded in colors a bit, but it will never fade in meaning to me. Metaphorically speaking, in this chapter of my life, the dandelions I was willing to release were safety and stability of full-time job, and the dandelion I was going to pursue was my newfound passion in baking. I was so excited about the decision that I've just made, and I was just bursting with joy and anticipation of the bright days ahead. Well, little did I know what I was setting myself up to.
And we don't need to do the things we don't want to do.